All right, so now's the time for us to finally start getting into actual script language. And the first thing we are going to do is talk about the agenda or upfront contract. And like I mentioned in one of the previous lessons, this is where we're basically giving our 60-second to 2-minute trailer of how the call is going to go. Now, out of the 3 sections, this is probably the easiest section, all right? It is also the section of the script that we can probably read word for word, okay? Almost. I mean, there's one of the things I should say with this script, and that I'll probably repeat several times throughout the lessons is, are you going to read this thing word for word? I mean, we talked about back in the number 1 goal lesson that we're not going to read it word for word. The script is a guide. And although that there is a lot of language that we can use word for word, there's an extra 20% that we got to get in there to help us, basically, if we want to make a sale. Okay, if we're going to get to a place where somebody is going to give us several $1,000s on, after only talking to us for one time on the call, then we're going to need to add something extra. However, for the agenda upfront contract section, this bit is pretty cut and dry, and this will be the shortest lesson of the 3 pillars or 3 sections that we're talking about. So let me grab, I have this language written down here. We're going to take this in a couple sections, all right? And actually, let me do this real quick. There's another bit I got to grab. Okay, so here we go. First bit we're going to do is I'm going to paste this. So it's like, oh, what happened? You put a new section in there. Yeah, it's just the intro. It's just to recognize the fact that you're going to go, hey, Bob, it's, such and such from Link Selling. How's it going? Is this still a great time? What? Oh, you're from Seattle. I visited there one time, or whatever the case may be. Sometimes there's just, a minute or two of, what do they say? Shooting the breeze, whatever the case may be, all right? But when you're really going to get into the call, it's where this agenda and upfront contract is starting, okay? And so here we go. Hey, so I'm going to read this because I'm going to break down each of the I could just paste this and be like, here you go, see ya. But I want to tell you why I've written the sections in here that I've written, okay? So, hey, Bob, before we get started, I like to kind of outline how these calls go. I usually get called out, especially by Rob Lime, for using these words because they can be a little loose. I happen to agree with him, but I'm also trying to write in here a way that somebody would actually talk. I don't want it to be rigid. So that's my goal with writing in these types of words. Okay. Hey, Bob, before we get started, I like to kind of outline how these calls go so that it can be the most effective use of our time. And the reason we typically have these calls is that people are trying to figure out how they get their business to the next level. And that usually revolves around solving some challenges in their marketing and sales systems. All right, so why do we have this language here? Well, first off, I have this first line in here to basically say, hey, I want to outline this. I'm going to give you the preview. I'm going to give you the 2-minute preview. And in giving you the 2-minute preview, I'm going to tell you what it's like on all the other calls I take. And all the other calls I take is me talking to people that are what? They're trying to figure out how to get their business to the next level. And that usually revolves around solving some challenges in their marketing and sales systems. So I'm like painting the picture here because I know that most people, they show up because they're having these problems. And so I'm calling it out. I'm saying, I'm hoping that this person is thinking, I'm on this call because I have a problem with my marketing and sales systems. I'm on this call because I have problems. And then I'm sitting here going, hey, yeah. So usually, the way these calls go is me trying to figure out how to get people's businesses to the next level. That usually revolves around trying to solve challenges in their marketing and sales systems. In the head of the prospect, they're like, oh, that's what I'm trying to do. So I must be in the right spot. Okay, cool. So what are we going to do? Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. What I like to do is spend 15 minutes or so diving into your business and current marketing strategy to see if there are some ways we can improve the growth of your business. It's like we're going to do some work on this call. And if I'm going to deep dive, that means I'm going to ask you some questions about your business. Okay, cool. So far, so good. Next bit. Usually we see one of these two things happening. Either people don't have the time or bandwidth to execute an essential strategy, or they're not quite sure what they should even be doing. And that is true. That is usually the main culprit. It is one of those two things. And so if we call that out again, it's cementing this idea up here. People are like, they're showing up the call and they're like, I have, I need to solve this challenge in my marketing and sales systems. I need to solve this problem because I don't have enough time, or I need to solve this problem in my marketing sales systems because I don't know what to do. And so I'm calling it out in even more detail. And so when I do that, I then follow up on this line. So if any of that resonates with you, I think we'll have a good call. Because if the person is thinking that, then like, I am thinking that. That does resonate with me. We're going to have a good call then. It's language that starts to align. It starts to align. And then I say, plus it looks like you joined our email list, which shows you have an interest, because people who join our email list have this interest. An interest in generating more appointments and getting more clients. Is that fair to say? More than not, people are going to go like, that's spot on. Yeah, that's it. Because that's why people join our email list. It's why they watch our webinars. It's why they open our emails. It's why they engage with us, is because they care about this topic, because they struggle with it. And we talk about this topic because not just because it's what we do, but because we know it's a big problem that people have. So then when they say yes, then obviously I'm going to say, so here's the thing. Is that fair to say? The majority of people will say yes, but what if they say no? Well, then I'm going to start, this is kind of like where the road is going to branch here. If somebody were to say no, I'm going to jump down to the questioning strategy and be like, oh, really? Well, tell me more about that then. Why are you on our email list? That you'll see in a second here, this opening opening line of the questioning strategy, what we're going to ask. And I may just jump to that. But at this point, I have to figure out, like, well, why are they saying no? But the majority of the people, I must say, do say yes. Okay? They do say yes. If they say yes, then I go, okay, cool. Well, we're going to deep dive some of this stuff and see if we can get some solutions to your problems. Why do I say this? Because what's the number one goal? The number one goal is to get solutions to people's problems. That is the number one goal. I didn't say, well, cool, we'll deep dive some of this stuff and I'll see if I can sell you some shit later on in the call. That's not what I'm trying to do. I only want to solve problems. Now, if you have a problem that Rocket Launch solves, we may talk about it because I think that's the best solution to your problem. But my main goal is to solve problems first. Now, speaking of Rocket Launch, I'm going to put in the next line of the agenda. All of this stuff is super important, but these next two bits are really important. Next bit. Towards the end of the call, if we think it's a both fit, good Lord, it's even in front of me. If we both think it's a fit, we can also talk through the details of our Rocket Launch program and see if it makes sense for us to continue working together. I might even put something at the end of it like, sound good? And why am I doing that? Because of the trailer example that I gave, right? If all of a sudden this person is expecting something by being on this call, because maybe they opened an email and it took them to a link, and maybe they're just misinformed. You're going to see somebody say, like, I thought this call was going to be about this. And if on that call instead you just start jumping in and talking about Rocket Launch, there's going to be a disconnect. It's like, why are we talking about Rocket Launch? When we talk about Rocket Launch, I'm telling them why. We're going to talk about Rocket Launch at the end of the call, not at the beginning and not at the middle, at the end. And only if we think if we both think it's a fit. Look at that, I got an error in there. If towards the end of the call, if we both think it's a fit. Okay? Cool. If we both think it's a fit. I have to get this line in here. This is super important. Why? Because I want them to know it's coming, right? Now, somebody could say, oh, so this is just a sales call. You're going to try and sell me some crap. No, not at all. You tell them the number one goal of the call. It's not a sales call. It's not a sales call. This is a coaching call. This is a strategy call, strategy session, however you want to describe it. But what we're going to do is dive into your business and try and solve some problems. We're only going to talk about Rocket Launch if you want to hear about it. If you don't, and neither of us, and we don't both think it's a good fit, we won't talk about it. So there you go. All right. We have laid the groundwork for the agenda here. So you can see, of course I say like, hey, this is a short lesson, but man, we've got only a handful of sentences here, maybe more than a handful, 9 or 10, and it is packed full of strategy and intention, okay? We're not just saying this because it's like, well, we got to fill the first 2 minutes with something. How about this language? We're being very intentional about why we put this language out here. We are seeding some thoughts. Think of Inception. If you hadn't seen that movie, we're basically planting ideas in their mind to try and, one, get them to realize like, hey, we're talking about solving challenges in marketing and sales systems. Usually we see people having one or two problems with it. You have this interest. I know you have this interest. You're on our list. So we're going to get you some solutions to this stuff. And then at the end, if it's a good fit, if we both think it's a good fit, we'll talk about Rocket Launch. Cool? Cool. All right. Now, last piece. You're going to notice that at these 4 sections, I end each section with what I like to call a transition line. And why do I put these in? Because I think a lot of times sales reps kind of get caught in a certain section and they're like, I know I need to get from where I'm at to this next section, but I'm just not sure how to do it. I don't know. I'm not sure what to do it. So I put in a transition line so that you always know where you're going, right? In each section, we are trying to get to the transition line, and the transition line is the bridge that connects us to the next section. So what's the transition line for this section? It's this. Whoops. Hold on a second. We don't want that. We want this. Okay. There we go. Here's our transition line. Cool. Well, why don't you tell me what's going on in your business that made you want to book this call? Now, first thing we got to do is put on the brakes, and you need to be very careful not to do what many people typically do, which is to breeze by this question and think they understand it, and then they get on the call and they say, why don't you tell me about a little bit about your business? Well, that can be a dangerous question to ask, because sometimes the response that you're going to get is, well, my great-grandfather came over here to the United States from Italy in 1912 and started, working in the coal mines, and then started this business, and then my grandfather was born in 1922, and then you get my point. Like, we've all been on these calls where all of a sudden it's like, what? Why are we? I didn't need your whole family history for the past 150 years. But the other person is interpreting, they're saying like, why don't you tell me about your business? They're telling you about their business. They think this is important information. We need to guide them a little bit more. This is the first question that we're asking in good questioning, for our questioning strategy and pain discovery section. We'll dive into this more in the next lesson. But the first question that we ask is actually our transition line. We're not saying, tell me about your business. We're saying, tell me what's going on in your business that made you want to book this call. Why? Because we want to get to pain. We don't need to know that somebody's great-grandfather came over to the United States in 1912. We need to get to the point of the conversation where they're telling us, I just don't have enough leads to make enough sales. Okay? But we want to shortcut that, and we want to get to the stuff that's important. Now, to be fair, you could ask this question and still get the whole 1912 story. And we have to have ways to combat that, which we will cover in the questioning strategy. But this gets the ball rolling. It's like, I'm trying to get you to tell me the problem, right? Because we're making an assumption that they have this problem with their sales and marketing. So one would assume that we're going to say, cool, why don't you tell me what's going on in your business that made you want to book this call? I'll tell you right now, Ben, the reason I booked this call is that I just am having trouble getting clients. I don't have enough leads to get the amount of clients that I need to. I need some help with trying to figure out how to generate more leads and get clients. That's what I need. And okay, some people will answer that directly. Some people will answer with the 1912 story, and then we'll get everything in between. And we're going to talk about in the next lesson how to handle that with the questioning strategy piece of the script. All right, see you over in that video.